Hello, it's David Boulding here with Cindy Griffith. Cindy's a Vancouver filmmaker, and she's also a social worker that works with the homeless population in downtown Vancouver. We're making this short film about probation officers and probation orders. And we're going to try something a little different, so I'm a bit nervous about this. I'm actually going to have notes this time, so I'm going to have to refer to my notes, as they say in court. I want to talk about this issue of probation orders because I think, in my experience, the most helpful person in the system is a probation officer. And I can tell you some of the finest people I've met in the system have been probation officers. Sadly, most of the people with fetal alcohol will convict themselves. They will tell the police what the police need to know. They're very easy cases for prosecutors to prove. And because they have problems with memory and reasoning and learning and attention, and lack the brain power that you and I just take for granted, they will not say, "I'm exercising my right to silence. I want to see a lawyer." They will please the police officers and give the police everything they need. The people may plead guilty or they may be found guilty by a trial, but generally speaking, what you can do is prepare for the outcome. And we've talked about this before, getting the black binder with a diagnosis and all of the information together. So the question I want to sort of specifically talk about today is break and enter charges, theft charges, and those kinds of charges. I want to talk about sex cases at a later date in a different film. And short story is, on the website davidboulding.com, there's an article called "The Rules of Sex," and I suggest you read that today because it may keep your son out of jail. So let's talk about what we can do today with respect to probation orders. Almost every criminal sentence has a probation order. Even if there's a part of the sentence is you have to go to jail for a certain amount of time, there is a probation order. And the probation order aims at stopping the criminal behavior. That's the intention, and that's what everybody wants to happen. Sadly, that's often not what happens. Often what happens is the person with fetal alcohol may have 1 or 2 criminal charges on his conviction sheet, but 5 or 10 breach of probation charges. To me, that's just evidence that we've failed the person. You need to educate your probation officer about fetal alcohol. Do it gently. Here's the crux of the matter. You and I, lawyers, cops, probation officers, community members, everybody in this system, we have to change. We have to make accommodations because the person with fetal alcohol is not going to grow new brain cells. Now, this is not an excuse for criminal behavior. This is a way forward. This is a way to stop future problems. We have to make accommodations that work, and the accommodations we make are dependent on the brain of the person with fetal alcohol. We need to identify the specific issues, and we need to develop ways using the external brain to create success. The hard thing is we have to see the brain. We have to actually see how the brain of the person convicted, the person found guilty, how is it different than our brains? And when we can see the difference, we can begin to build a pathway towards more success. And that's not easy. It's really hard work because we have all these assumptions about how people should behave. Now, probation officers are important. Don't do what they say, you go to jail. Do what they say, and they have access to programs, and many of the programs are very helpful. Do what they say, and you will find the probation officer will bend over backwards to help you. They're part police officer. They can arrest you and send you to jail and stuff like that. And they're also part social worker. They're kind of like a court-appointed grandparent with a big stick. So what you want to develop then is a relationship with the probation officer that helps to create success. I think probation officers are very exceptional people. And they are government employees who are overworked, overloaded, and underpaid. Your probation appointment may be 10 minutes a week, maybe a month, maybe 1 minute. That's because it's not unusual for probation officers to have 75 to 100 cases on their load. So you need to be aware of the circumstances, the context which the probation officer works in. He reports to a judge. The probation officer has a boss. He is expected to do a whole bunch of stuff to make sure that he's doing his job right. Understand that and try to make his job easier. Judges rely on probation officers. This means that if you're back in court and the probation officer says A and you say B, the judge is going to believe the probation officer. Try to avoid that situation. If you need to disagree with the probation officer, make sure you have the facts straight. Make sure you've got your story straight. Make sure you've got the advantages all set out. Make sure you can give the judge a solution to the problem. If you just want to complain about the probation officer, go outside, bang your head against a brick wall, get it out of your system. It has no place in the courtroom, and it's not doing the person you love any good to badmouth a probation officer. Oh, we have to talk about the bad apples. If you happen to get one of the few bad apples, and there are some probation officers who are less than perfect, be careful, write everything down. A judge one time in one of the American states told me that his single biggest enemy was old-style probation officers who, with any excuse to send someone to jail, would send someone to jail. He said it made his job very difficult, as well as overloading the jails. So there are some probation officers that everybody knows that aren't particularly helpful. And if you don't have a probation officer that's helpful, you may not have any option in a small town. He may be the only one. There may be a time when you can find ways to get a new probation officer. And you may need to go to court to get a specific kind of order that requires the probation officer to listen to you. I've heard of several cases in Canada and in the United States and in Australia where parents have gone to court and got orders to include them in the probation process. If the person has fetal alcohol, this is the key to success. You need to include the probation officer in your external brain. He needs to be part of a team, he needs to be respected, and the way to do that is so everybody has the same information. You don't want the probation officer to have some secret information that is not shared by everybody else. The reason you don't want to argue with a probation officer, it's very simple. You imagine a clerk at the Department of Motor Vehicles that you start yelling at. All she has to do is shut the wicket and walk away. If she does that to you, you don't get a driver's license. Probation officers are much the same way. See them as overloaded people with good hearts, and then you can appreciate how difficult their job is. And that being said, you can educate probation officers. Do it gently, and I said earlier, you might have the perfect binder. Don't expect them to read it. It's a gift if they do read it. You don't want to overload the probation officer. Do not phone call them to death. That doesn't help. If you do that, you won't get the services you need. Now, I've mentioned the black binder, but I want to tell you about some resources that are fabulous. The best resource on planet Earth has just been published by the Asante Center. Now that's www.asantecentre.org. It's a 900-page interactive text. The author is Crystal Baudelaire. She's a speech and language pathologist, and she's a genius. And she's been helped by lawyers and judges and probation officers, and lots of people have input. There are 2 copies of this text, one for parents and one for the probation police and lawyers. It's important because advice to parents is not the same as advice to probation officers. Remember, a probation officer is a policeman. The Asante Center text is absolutely fabulous, and it's huge, and it's free. The second most valuable help is this DVD by Dr. Julianne Connery, available from the Asante Center, called Talking with Victor. This is a 35-minute DVD. It is simply the best teaching resource on the topic of fetal alcohol and the law. Buy it. give one to your lawyer, and try to find a way to give one to your probation officer. If he takes the half an hour or so to watch this, it will change the life of the person in trouble. A second resource is this fabulous book by Diane Malbin. It's the standard. Everybody owns a copy of this book. Buy one for yourself, one for your lawyer, and I would recommend you give one to the judge. Make sure your probation officer has a copy. Diane's book has everything you need to know to create success, and the advantage is it's very thin. The third resource is Diane's second book. This is the second edition, and this is a collection of information on fetal alcohol for professionals. I think it's about 20, 25 bucks. You can Google Diane Malbin at Facets, FASCETS.org, and this book has everything. It can be used in sentencing. It can be used to explain how to make probation orders work. It absolutely contains all the good stuff about languaging and about the brain and about how to create success. Now, those are a lot of resources. Again, it would be nice if probation officers read all of this stuff. The good ones will.